In this video, I'm going to be going over how to draw a Bohr model, which is a model of the atom, shows exactly where the electrons are within an atom's energy levels. And in order to start, we do need to talk about the different parts of the Bohr model first. So in the center of the Bohr model, this purple circle, this is called the nucleus. And we have already kind of learned about the nucleus of the atom. The nucleus is where the protons and neutrons are. So typically in a Bohr model, you're just going to say how many protons and how many neutrons are there. You do not have to draw all of these individual particles. Protons and neutrons, they're going to be all kind of clumped together, and it can be a little bit chaotic to try to draw all of them. Typically, all I want you to do is just tell me how many protons, how many neutrons it even has. Then surrounding the nucleus, we have all of these energy levels, and I only have 4 rings drawn right now, but you can draw it past 4. We're never going to see any that go past 4 because when atoms get that big, the Bohr model does tend to not work quite as well. So the rings are called energy levels, and typically we just number them. So we have n equals 1, which is the first ring. We have n equals 2, which is the second ring. N equals 3, which is the third ring, and then this one goes up to 4, so n equals 4 would be the fourth ring. You do not have to draw all 4 rings if you are not using all 4 rings. You only need to draw the ones that are actually occupied by electrons. Okay, so each level can hold a different number of electrons, and I'll kind of explain what they are. So the first level, the smallest level, n equals 1. This ring is the smallest ring out of all of them, and it can only hold 2 electrons total. The first 2 electrons you will always put on that first ring, and then you will move up from there. So the second ring is a little bit bigger, and it can hold a total of 8 electrons. The third ring technically can hold 18. However, we treat it like it can hold 8. And this is mostly because of that reason I was talking about before, where when you get to these big atoms, this model kind of falls apart, and this is a part of that. So even though it can hold 18, we're going to pretend it only holds 8. So pretend it's 8. The last ring can hold 32, but you are never going to fill that ring all the way up. The most you will ever use that fourth ring for is to put 1 or 2 electrons on. It will not really be used past that. So you do not need to worry about filling up all 32 of those spaces. Okay, so here are the steps that you are going to follow if you are drawing a Bohr model. So the first thing you have to do is find the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And you do that just by looking at the information that's given to you in the problem. The number of protons is going to be the atomic number for that element. The neutrons you can typically get from the mass. And then the electrons, if it is a neutral atom, that is going to be the same as the number of protons. If the atom is actually an ion, if there is a charge, then you would need to add or subtract electrons to match whatever the charge was for that atom. All right, so let's go ahead and do one example so that you can see how this is done. So let's say I am drawing a Bohr model for sulfur 34. Okay. So like I said, step 1 is going to be to count the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And I'm just going to do that underneath over here. So if I look up sulfur on the periodic table, sulfur is element number 16, which means it has 16 protons. I know that the mass number 34 is going to be the protons and the neutrons combined. So I need to find a number that adds with 16 to give me 34. And that number is going to be 18. Those 2 numbers add to 34. So I'm done with that part. The electrons, this atom has no charge. It is completely neutral. And when something is neutral, it's going to have the same number of protons as it does electrons. All right, so that's step 1. The second part of drawing a Bohr model is filling in the nucleus. And the nucleus is going to be easy. Like I said, just write how many protons, how many neutrons it has. The third thing you're going to do for the electrons, you're going to fill the electrons. Starting with n equals 1. We are only going to use as many rings as we need to, and we're always going to start with the smallest ring and work our way outward. Okay, I am going to copy this down next to my problem so that we can just fill in on the Bohr model that's given to us here. Okay, so I know that my sulfur atom has 16 protons and 18 neutrons, so I'm just going to fill that in. 16, 18, nice and easy. Then to draw the electrons, I'm going to start with the smallest ring, n equals 1. The first ring can hold 2 electrons, so I'm just going to put 2 electrons on that ring. The second ring can hold a total of 8. I've used up 2 electrons already. I have 16 to put on my model. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Filling up the first 2 rings will always bring you up to 10 electrons. If I have put 10 electrons on my model, that means I only have 6 left because I only have 16 electrons in this atom. So the remaining 6 will just go on this outermost ring. And that would be what I have drawn from my Bohr model. So you can see here for this example, I actually ended up not even using n equals 4, so I'm just going to erase it completely. I don't actually need it for my problem. And that's how you would draw a Bohr model.